Welcome to Business Success Tips, where you learn to make more money in less time and have a lot more fun. I'm your host, Paul Sanneman. I'm founder of Contractor Staffing Source, where we help contractors build great teams. I have Andrew Killian today from, um, Homestead. What the name of the company? One more time, Homestead?
Homestead Hotleads.
Well, that's a good thing. Hot leads, that's better than a cold lead, right? We've all had those,
Definitely.
right? So tell me, Killian, what does Homestead Hot Leads do and how do they do it?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you, Paul, so much for having me. And basically, we believe in the power of specialization, and not just with our niche of remodeling contractors, but also with our services. We find a lot of agencies they try to be everything to everyone, SEO, PPC, TikTok, email, social media, smoke signals,
Mhm.
carrier pigeons.
Right.
And
Science,
so
whatever it takes, right?
yeah, and so they end up being kind of just, decent at all of it. And so really, we really believe in the power of specialization. And so when we first started, our original bread and butter was Facebook ads, and we figured out pretty quickly that the platform works way better for contractors selling wants rather than needs. So think of something like roofing or HVAC tends to be more of a need, right? People
Right.
are
Your roof's
actively,
leaking and your toilet's overflowing. You're in a hurry.
right,
Right.
right. And so people are actively searching for that on Google. But for something like a new kitchen or a new bathroom, or even a new patio or deck, it's more of a want, a big desire for a homeowner.
Right.
And so we find the Facebook platform is really one of the best because, homeowners are kind of mindlessly scrolling through it after they get home from work. And so when we
Mhm.
can leverage where their attention already is and kind of get in front of them. And another beautiful thing about remodels, it has a really nice aesthetic look, like at the end. And so leveraging those two things with a strong offer, we think it's really effective. But more recently, we've also shifted to something called database reactivation. We found that a lot of contractors are sitting on a literal gold mine of unclosed quotes and forgotten, estimates. And they kind of tend to think, oh, since if they didn't close then, that they're dead and gone.
Right.
And we find there's so much revenue to be unlocked, sitting dormant in their CRM. And just because it didn't close back then doesn't mean it's dead. And so we basically have a simple system to revive those old conversations and estimates and turn them into actual paying high ticket jobs.
Well, I know. I mean, for example, if you buy a house, your mortgage broker, if he's any good, never forgets you because you're eventually going to buy another house, right? Even if
Right,
it's 4 years
right.
later. But you're right. Remodelers, a group are, sort of focused on the now. And, they didn't buy fine, they're gone. And they spent all these, maybe 5, 10 years accumulating all this reputation, all these people that know them. They just drop the
Hmm.
ball, right? They just don't
Yeah,
stay in touch.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and
how
it's funny.
do you do that? How do you, let's say a remodeling company, I've worked for, been in business 10 years, probably doing 3 million a year, doing
Mhm,
15, 20 projects. I probably have, my closing ratio is maybe 20%. So I've got maybe 1,000 projects for the last 20 years I haven't even done. And I just forgot about
mhm,
those guys. They're in some database somewhere,
mhm.
maybe I have a CRM, maybe I don't, maybe it's an Excel spreadsheet. Maybe I'm sophisticated and have like Salesforce, probably not, or HubSpot or something, and probably just some stuffed in some drawers. From not bad as maybe paper, but they're certainly not easily accessible. So how would you deal with that?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and that's the thing for a lot of, mid to larger size remodeling companies. It kind of becomes a someday project that they never
Mhm.
really get around to. They're, so busy with other things. And so basically we have a simple three-step process. We find there's three components to it work really well. Um, One is gratitude. We find people never really get tired of hearing thank you. Even if it's people they haven't talked to for 3, 6, 12 months ago, just like, hey, thank you, we appreciate you, we miss you, we want you back. And then the second thing is a strong offer. We find that so many companies are offering like 10 to 15% off their new kitchen, free estimate, free quote. And so if all of your competitors are doing that, we kind of need to think outside the box and offer something unique. And one thing that's working kind of well is just a simple add-on bonus, right? So on top of the 10 to 15% off, if they get a new kitchen, maybe something like you know, add on a wine tasting event to celebrate as a voucher. For a new bathroom, maybe a free spa day. Um, New patio or deck, maybe a new grill or barbecue to celebrate with a barbecue. Just little things like this can really kind of trigger a homeowner's interest and kind of raise their hand and say, "Hey, I want that. That sounds cool." And then that coupled with kind of just a time sensitive deadline with within the week, we find it works really well with those three components in play.
Can you
And
give me
so
a
say
sample of where they may have worked for one of your clients?
it again.
Can you give me a sample of where that may have worked for one of your clients? You don't have to give the name of the client, but just sort of how it worked.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, I mean, typically they have a CRM of old people,
Right.
and we basically just um, request that as a CSV file,
Hmm.
um, upload it into our CRM, and kind of plug and play the email sequence of both the gratitude, offering them an add-on bonus, and then kind of just booking them into their calendar
Hmm.
and into the remodeling contractor's calendar. And typically it tends to go, and that's the funny thing. When you have a strong offer, it really can and improve your close rate
I
just
see.
with that alone.
So they can expect through, if they have a reasonable list, they can expect me one or two appointments a month out of that.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely depends on the size. Typically, minimum seeing 100 to 500.
Right.
1,000 and up, you're going to get a lot better ROI.
Hmm.
But because we like to do it in, the time sensitive deadline to offer, typically within, a week, we can at least find, two, three, or five hidden kitchen bathroom remodel jobs.
That's great. Well, that's making
Yeah,
better use of your current assets, obviously, right?
yeah, yeah. And I like to think of high ticket sales kind of like a football field, right? And the great paradox is that even though we haven't heard from these people 3, 6, 12 months, they are, paradoxically a lot closer to the end zone because, they know your company, they raised their hand in the first place, however far back that was. They kind of trust you a bit. They've requested a quotes. Um, and so that's a great irony, as opposed to like a new ad campaign. It's a complete stranger. They're kind of
Right.
maybe back on the 10, 20 yard line. So,
Right. So I would say clearly most, especially remodeling contractors, like contractors in general, do a poor job of nurturing the database that they're working with. Because I think they don't know how
mhm.
to do it or don't care.
Right,
They're so
right.
focused on getting the new leads, and they're spending a ton on like some Google lead to cost them like, $100 to
Hmm.
get the call that
Hmm.
they neglect a lot of that hidden riches in that database that they just may have had for years and not done anything with. They just forgot about it.
Right. Yeah. And I talked to a lot of contractors, and they're almost kind of, surprised to hear when I, recommend this to them. Well, how about we just go into, the gold mine that you're already sitting on and kind of reactivate that? And, they're kind of almost like surprised to hear, like, wait, I can do that? Like, I thought I just had to keep, throwing more money at the wall with new leads. And
Right.
so, yeah, it's a lot more effective, and you ironically make more money because they're a lot closer to the end
Right.
zone.
I mean, I've been in sales a long time, and I know people are surprised sometimes where you've got to close 5 times in order to get somebody to say yes. And,
Right,
most people in construction aren't salespeople, so they ask once or twice and they say no when they're done, right?
right, right.
They don't understand that, that person was interested and you just
Hmm.
can't ignore them. And what's really frustrating, I'm sure, is if, I'm sure this has happened where some guy, finally gets a hold of somebody and go, oh yeah, we didn't think about you, so we hired this other contractor to do the work.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's a big thing. Like when you kind of just don't act on it and just let it sit, your competitors can just come along and scoop those jobs up, when they could have been yours.
And that's
So
true.
follow up is really huge.
So let's say I've got I don't know, probably typical has 500,000 people's database. He's been in business any time at all. All the people that
Right.
said no for whatever, not wrong time, too much money, didn't go with anybody else. And I'm sure it's interesting, a lot of those people, I know percentages, but they didn't go with anybody. They interviewed three contractors, and for whatever reason, their dog ate the homework or pick one. They decided not to do anything,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So nobody gets back to them later. So what does it actually cost in time and money? Let's say I've got 1,000, make it easy. I've got 1,000 people in my database. I haven't done anything with them. They just sat there. Um, how much time and how much money is it going to cost to like wake up that database?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess if you're asking from our point of
Yes.
view, our
Yes.
service, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the things we really like about this model is because, especially nowadays, trust is maybe a little bit lower, and so we'd like to do this really no upfront cost or risk or time to them, and we would only ask for any sort of payment after we've gotten them actual booked paying kitchen or bathroom remodel jobs, just to kind of
Hmm.
prove that we can actually bring them results they want. And so yeah, in terms of time or money, is really no money up front to the contractor, really no time to them. We've basically put it all together, plug and play. And like I said, a strong offer coupled with the time sensitive deadline within a week. Within a week, you're looking at at least two or three more remodel jobs, and it depends on the area, obviously, but typically average maybe a new bathroom 30, 50K, kitchen between 50 and 100K.
Hmm.
So really, yeah, it's no upfront cost or risk to them, really no time to them, and it really works better for both parties.
And so
They get
what you take a percentage or per appointment? How do you charge for this kind of stuff?
Yeah, so basically, we kind of think of it like a virtual sales commission person. So
Mhm.
basically, yeah, just a revenue share after they have a paying job. Um, Typically around 20% around there.
Okay. So if I get a paying job from you, I'm going to pay you 20%, but I can probably add that onto the cost of the job anyway, right? So it's just going to cost me much of anything, I'm assuming.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of like we want this to be kind of like found money for them rather than an
Right.
expense. And so for a lot of these contractors, because they're not really doing much with their list, it's kind of like a job that, they might not have gotten anyways with the follow-up. So that's kind of
Mhm.
where we come in and just, unlock hidden jobs that they might not have found.
Okay. So it actually, if they can build the cost of your commission into the job itself, it's sort of free and found money in a way, right?
Exactly, exactly right.
Okay.
And that's
Can you give me an example, don't name the company specifically, but how that's worked for one of your clients? What you did, how you did it, and how much work they generated in 6 months, or give me some numbers at work.
yeah. So well, one recent client we had there, booking them. And another thing we had to think about is like the buyer from their point of view. We find
Hmm.
that typically more recently there's a lot more women homeowners, especially with new kitchens or bath. They tend to be um, the decision makers for big
Hmm.
projects like this. And so when we think about our offers, we want to kind of tailor it on to that. So that's what I was
Hmm.
talking about earlier, like maybe a free massage or spa day.
Right.
And so that's worked really well. And kind of like I talked about, at least two or three new remodel jobs within a week, and depends on the area, but a new kitchen 50 100 between 50 and 100K. Three of those you're looking at 300 gross profits, and that's just within one week. And we typically don't like to do it all at once, right? So like maybe just a segment of their list, the next week, test another segment. And so, a few new remodel jobs within a week, a couple 100,000, you know, 4 weeks, 4 weeks in a month. Yeah, you're looking at at least, 400 or 500K.
Wow, that's great. So it's sort of five for 500,000. They wouldn't have gotten any other way, or the competition would have got it because they ignored them.
Yeah. And so that's really the power of database reactivation and follow up when you can really leverage that and realize that these people in your CRM are a lot closer to the sale than they realize and kind
Hmm.
of bring them
Well,
found
it's sort
money.
of,
They're
it seems to me like you're developing an asset they have, but they don't even know it's an asset, right? I mean, it's sort of like,
exactly,
to use an analogy, they've got a gold mine. They haven't been there so long, they gave up, and you go and dig some gold, and you just want a piece of the gold you dig out, and you're happy, right?
exactly. And yeah, it's like they've got it in their mind that these people are dead and gone. So their expectations are, a lot lower as opposed to something like a expensive ad campaign.
Right.
And so when we can bring them even just two, new remodel jobs, they're like, wow, this actually works.
Amazing.
This is so cool.
I think it's a great idea because you're right. Most of the people listening to this podcast have, between, 100 to 500, whatever, of people that all said no for whatever reason. They just sort of,
Hmm.
if you're lucky, they might get a newsletter, not even that. So
Hmm.
just ignore this asset they've got, and you've got a really great way of developing an asset, and you get paid on commission, so it doesn't cost them anything. You don't get
Exactly.
liver, which is great. So, Andrew, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Yeah, so you can find me at our website is homesteadhotleads.com. We have a free script or download for the guide to that kind of lays out our strategy for the database reactivation. If you want to, try it yourself, you're welcome to do that. But also, there's a link in there for a discovery call if you want to have a discussion with any contractors that might find that interesting. Just kind of meet them where they're at and kind of plug
Mhm.
and play it into their business. And also, you can find me on LinkedIn as well, Andrew Killian. But yeah, those are probably the main two ways.
Okay, great. And so, do you have an email address they can use?
Yeah, it's Andrew at homesteadhotleads.com.
That's easy. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
Andrew, thank you for being here. I think this is a really good idea because my guess is a lot of people listening to this podcast are sitting on this gold mine. And I mean, it reminds me of the Field of Diamonds talk. Have you ever heard that? An old one where I
Mm,
think it was Dale Carnegie or somebody said that, some guy went all over the world looking for this, to be successful. And then when he died, he found out he was sitting on one of the largest diamond mines in the world. And that's a true story. So I think it's sort of
hmm.
right. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for being here. I appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you for having me.